Sheila Robinson, and I have the joy of being a graph guide in Stephanie Evergreen's Data Visualization online course. Stephanie will tell you more about the Graph Guide program in addition to teaching you the solutions to these 5 mistakes we often see in our Graph Guide students when they initially join the course. Without a doubt, you've seen and may be making some of these same mistakes too. You'll want to grab a notebook and turn off those notifications so that you can tune in to these lessons that will immediately upgrade your skills. Dr. Stephanie Evergreen is my friend and colleague, and she's the smartest, most insightful data visualizer I've ever known. For one thing, she studied this for her dissertation, so when I say she's smart, that's not just an opinion. And when I describe her as insightful, I mean that she has so much experience helping organizations in every industry all over the world tell the story of their data, that she can solve any data problem, whether it's finding the right chart type or resetting the company culture around data. That's why our Graph Guide students just love our course. You're in for some valuable and free advice today. Now, here's Stephanie.
What's up, everybody? I am so excited to be here with you. This is going to be so fun because there is nothing better than saving people from falling flat on their face. And I don't want that for you. I want you to nail every single one of your presentations. I want you to rock every one of your dashboards. I want you to become that go-to person in your office who has the answer to every single database question. And that's what you get when you clean up some of these mistakes. So let's jump right in. The biggest mistake, the number one issue is you're pointless. You don't know your point. And if you don't know what you're trying to say, how is your audience ever going to figure it out? What's worse is that people are such great meaning makers, they'll create points out of your data, stuff you didn't even intend, unless you give them your insight. The solution? Say your point. If you want your audience to understand the goal of your slide, you just have to tell them the goal. Many of us, especially if we come from an academic background, are trained to not convey any sort of clear point. We expect that the data should just speak for itself. Here's an example from the American Association of University Women, a classic table on income in women-dominated fields. There is no clear point. The story is really only obvious to other people who know the data as intimately as the authors of this table. Everyone else is going to need a little assistance. Now, chances are you already know the point. It's likely in your speaker notes somewhere, and you may be intending to communicate it verbally while you're presenting. You should still do that. But you'll need to reinforce that point visibly by making it the title of your graph. This way, the graph can be viewed later without you present, or posted onto social media, and the point will be carried with it. Here's how I remade that table. We'll talk in a bit about the power of different chart types, but for now, focus on the chart's title. Notice how it's telling you the story, clear as day. That is an important and frustrating story that deserves to be told. And it's as simple as taking advantage of your chart title space. Let me show you another example because this solution works on slides too, not just graphs. So Amanda sent me this slide and said, I'm really getting especially stuck on the diagram. The goal is to give an overview of how telehealth work is spread across the agency and highlight the type of work that each division does. I thought I'd also highlight where leadership sits. Okay, end quote. So if you're coming in from the outside like I am, yeah, okay, this is busy and confusing. I don't know what half this stuff means. The quote marks around division are throwing me off. But if I go back to Amanda's goal for the slide, I don't even need to know what half this stuff means. I just need to see that telehealth work is spread across the agency and that leadership sits in 2 of these columns. This is so easy to fix. I just replaced Amanda's old title with the goal she said herself, and I added some highlights to leadership. Mistake number 1 is you're pointless. And the fix is to say your point at the top of your graph or slide. Mistake number 2, you talking to me? When people aren't 100% sure you're talking to them, they leave you. You want your audience to immediately see themselves in your data and how that data story is relevant to them, which means you have to figure out who you're talking to. You have to identify your people. Your people are on a spectrum in terms of what they need to see from you in order to get hooked in and engaged. At the one end of the spectrum, we have the public. And by public, I mean people who can tend to be data scared. Now, not everybody. I mean, I'm in the public and I don't feel data scared, but we do have this segment out there that we are often trying to reach with our data. And these are folks being actively told they can't trust science. So if we want to reach them, we have to be easy and unintimidating, like using an icon of an hourglass 25% full to represent 25%. At the other end of the spectrum, we have the very serious crowd, academics, epidemiologists, statisticians, who want to see traditional graphs like a bar chart. That bar chart probably even needs to have confidence intervals on it. Now, we have studies that show that if we take that bar chart with confidence intervals over to the public, we scare them, we make them feel stupid. And no doubt, if you took a little hourglass icon over to some academics, they would laugh you out of the room. And you likely have audiences that fall somewhere along this spectrum, which is your clue that one size does not fit all. One graph will not make all parties happy. Your chart choice and even the words you choose to convey your point will depend on your audience. Let's take a look at another example. So this is the COVID dashboard from the state of Oregon. It is long, my screen is not long, so I'm going to chop it in half and put them side by side so we can see it better. Now, Oregon is one of my clients, so we have already discussed my feedback on this dashboard, and by the time this class is live, they have likely already incorporated my advice. But there is a lesson in here for all of us about audience. Any state's COVID dashboard is probably intended to be for everybody, from the epidemiologists at the CDC to your next door neighbor, which makes designing these a difficult task because it's hard to make everyone happy. Whether they do it or not, this dashboard ultimately ends up mainly used by the academic epis and journalists who have trained themselves on how to read data that is presented this way. The reliance on tables and isolated numbers without much context are clues that unintentionally the general public is being pushed out of this audience because general public doesn't as easily consume data presented this way. General public comes to this dashboard asking burning questions like, how bad is it? Do I need to wear a mask? And it isn't easy to get those answers here. Only people with deep contextual knowledge can read these numbers and know the answers to those questions. So mistake number 2 is you talking to me? And that's the thing. The data are always talking to someone. We just usually don't know who. So start by identifying your people. Mistake number 3, you're basic. You're using your graphs default colors and fonts, whatever is built into the software program you're using. And it's making you look like you're a total newbie, like you just figured out how to use your computer. And you might have, but that can be your little secret. The most annoying example of this is my hometown newspaper. They mostly avoid graphs, but when they use them, they are making mistake number 3. Here is a smattering that I have stashed in my collection over the years, and you likely recognize the font, the color scheme, and the graph styles here. They are Microsoft Excel defaults. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with making your graphs in Excel. You just need to incorporate your own branding so that you don't look like you're basic. Compare this to the Washington Post. They have established fonts and color schemes that show up in all of their graphs. Chart titles are the same font size. Lines have circles on the ends. Source data is always in the same location. It's consistent. Consistency is how you go pro. Mistake number 3 is using default formatting, and the solution is to be branded. Mistake number 4, playing small. You play small when you only consider the limited graph types that are available preloaded into your software. There is so much more out there to try. If you start exploring outside those bounds, chances are you'll find a new chart type that can better tell your data story. Let me show you an example. On the Susan G. Komen website, if you dig deep enough, you'll find some data viz on breast cancer rates. You'll be able to find data on how breast cancer rates break down over time, shown as a line graph. It's one of those default chart types, and it's a super typical way to show trends over time, but it isn't so great at highlighting a profound story in this chart. Can you see it? Let me spell it out. This graph is showing that while white women have a higher incidence of breast cancer than Black women are more likely to die from the disease. Now that I say that, can you see it? It is a little easier to see it, right? And that's why strong, courageous, clear titles are important, our solution to mistake number 1. But that's not all. A better graph type on the same data would paint a picture that better matches this urgent, important story. An overlapping bar chart is a clear way of graphing data when the two variables are inherently interrelated, like incidence and mortality. This better captures the relationship, showing that those who die from breast cancer are a subset of those who contract the disease in the first place. The larger set of blue bars in the graph for Black women is key to this story. Now, if we wanted to highlight the racial disparity angle of this story, we could take it even further. You see here with an overlapping bar chart, as great as this graph is, it's easy to spot the relationship between incidence and mortality rates for each race because they're in the same chart. But it's not so easy to compare incidence rates between Black women and white women because number 1, the data are in 2 separate graphs, and number 2, the scale stretches all the way down to 0 so that it can include that mortality data. I mean, the gray bars don't look all that different, do they? So let's reshuffle the data so that incidence rates are paired together and mortality rates are paired together using scales that are more appropriate for each set of data. And this time, let's use a graph type that better tells stories about disparity, a dumbbell dot plot. When we cram the data on the same scale, we make it difficult to see these important disparities in each data set. Better graph types tell the story about breast cancer disparity with the concern and urgency that are warranted. So don't play small with your graph types. That's mistake number 4. Instead, learn about the broader range of chart types and when they work. Mistake number 5, an expensive one when you have a champagne budget but PBR skills. Now, this sounds like a nice problem to have. Who doesn't want a champagne budget? The mistake is when we don't make use of it and it's wasted money. Trust me, your boss hates that. I see this happen in about half of the people who contact me for a workshop and in many of our Graph Guide students. Even my dad complained to me about this problem, not back in 1981 when this picture was taken, but in the past few years. He said, "Steph, have you ever heard of Tableau? My company bought a license for everyone. I guess it's supposed to help with data, but I opened it up, couldn't figure out what to do with it, and I haven't touched it since. What's it do?" I was both like thrilled that I knew something my dad didn't know and horrified by this expensive mistake. His company had a champagne budget, but my dad only had PBR skills. So let's get down to brass tacks, okay? Tableau was billing my dad's company $70 for every month that he wasn't using it. That's $840 a year, multiplied by every person in the company. He had a team of 100, which makes that an $84,000 mistake. That's a pretty fat stack of bills for a medium-sized company. So what if you could tell your boss that you could save $84,000? She'd say you as a pretty indispensable employee. So here's how you make the budget and the skill set align. Option one, use the tools you already have and know well. If you're a spreadsheet hero and you've lived your career in Excel, you can absolutely make incredible graphs directly in that tool. If you've ever only looked at the defaults, you wouldn't believe me, but remember the overlapping bars and the dumbbell dots I showed you a moment ago? Done in Excel. Here's Sherry, one of our Graph Guide students. She's actually a graphic designer who wanted to incorporate more data viz into her infographics, and Excel was already on her computer. So she signed up for Graph Guides to go deep into that one program and become the absolute queen at graphing with Excel. And here's what she's been churning out lately. Check out this spectrum display and the dot plots she generated. Holy cow. Show those to your boss and say, cancel the Tableau budget and put that $84,000 into my promotion, right? So option one is to use the tools you already have to their maximum capacity. Option two, get training in new tools. This is Mariana. She could hear the rumblings that her company was about to invest in Tableau, but she knew that the vast majority of her colleagues had no idea how to use it, including her. So she convinced her boss to enroll her in Graph Guides, where she leapfrogged her existing Excel DataViz skill set over to Tableau. Learning a new software is hard. It takes time, and that's why most people don't do it. But Mariana had a coach looking over her shoulder, helping her take that next step. By the end of her year in Graph Guides, Mariana's confidence level was in outer space. She couldn't be touched. Her boss was blown away, and she became the go-to resource who could then inspire and train all the other people with a Tableau license to do the same. Mistake number 5 is champagne budget, PBR skills, and your two options are to use the tools you have or to get training in new tools so the budget and the skills match. To recap, mistake number 1, your point list can be fixed by making use of your title space to tell people your point. Mistake 2, you talking to me, is solved when you know your audience and you use chart types and word choices that they relate to. Your basic, mistake number 3, is cured when you switch away from defaults and use your own branding. Mistake 4, play small, can be figured out by expanding the breadth of chart types you know how to create. And finally, mistake 5 is all about making sure you have the skills to take advantage of whatever software is available. Whenever we work closely with a Graph Guide student, we prevent these mistakes from seeing the light of day. Mariana even talked about mistake 4, play small. She said, I think the greatest value that I have gained is knowing there is a wide variety of charts and graphs that can be used to present the data. I consider myself a creative person, yet I was stuck using the same visualization styles over and over. Now that I've learned so many, I can challenge myself to make visuals stand out in any presentation. I've mentioned the Graph Guide program a few times now, and I want to tell you about it because I think it matches up to why you tuned into this class in the first place. You want to learn how to be the very best at data visualization. You want to avoid mistakes other people make, and you want your work to shine. So you're likely consuming every possible free bit of information on the internet. Okay, I see you. That's one way to go about it, and that's what I had to do for a long time. But there's an easier way that's faster and more effective. Get a guide. And not just any guide, but someone who is there just for you. Here's how the Graph Guide program works. We start with an assessment of your current skill set. We talk to you about your hopes and dreams and upcoming work projects. Based on that information, I develop a customized set of graphing tutorials that are catered specifically to you and your situation. It's ambitious, no doubt, okay? You got to accomplish 50 tutorials in 1 year. After that, you are totally unstoppable. It would be challenging, if not impossible, to do that on your own, which is why you have a guide, an expert in data visualization who talks with you about every single graph you make. You can't cut corners. You can't half-ass it. We train you to have a high standard for your work because you want to be the best, and this is how you get there. During your year with Graph Guides and after your year is over, you have unlimited access to the rest of the resources in the Data Visualization Academy. What's that, you ask? The DataViz Academy is my flagship online course. It has over 200 tutorials in Excel, Tableau, R, even Google Sheets. Everything you need to know about how to make stellar graphs is here. We even have lessons about presentations, diagrams, qualitative data viz, you name it. And we add fresh tutorials all the time. Every month, we have a live webinar where I answer your data viz questions. We have private online forums. We have fun. There's a lot to explore, and you get unlimited access when you enroll. It is great if you are self-directed. If you need to accelerate faster and you like having a clear plan in place for your growth, you belong in Graph Guides. You get that review of your skills, that tailored curriculum, that rapid development with an expert coaching you along, plus everything in the Academy, which is a $1,500 value for $3,000. Compared to what that would typically cost to get on-demand data viz coaching, this is a great deal. We only open enrollment twice a year. Now is one of those times, and I can tell you right now, next time enrollment opens, the price is going to increase. So the enrollment link is in the description. Click it. Let's get to work right now. A month from now, you won't even believe how much you've changed. You're going to go far, fast. It happens to all of our students. Even just a few tutorials in, and you'll never be able to look at data the same. If you want to be the best, come with me. You already showed up here with me today because you have dreams about how your life would change if you were the best at data visualization. That was the first step. Click the link in the description and take the next step. Enroll in Graph Guides, fire up your jet engines. It's going to be an amazing year. I'll see you on the inside.